if it can do good work 70% of the time, that's going to be good enough for people to appreciate it.
Welcome to Not Another CEO podcast. I'm your host, David Politis. Every week, we talk to inspiring leaders and get the true stories, the ups and downs, the lessons learned, and come away with actionable advice for our own journeys.
Welcome back to another Failing Forward edition of the Not Another CEO podcast. This is the show for the rest of us, where we explore the other side of entrepreneurship, where we listen to the journeys of those who, like me, gloriously fought but lost, and where we hear the lessons of those with the guts to start something that maybe just didn't work out. Today, I'm honored to introduce Sasha Pasulka, a serial founder, longtime marketing executive, and software engineer. The arc of Sasha's career is fascinating. She started as a software engineer working on aerospace systems at Northrop Grumman, including the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter, which I don't know if we're going to talk about today, but is pretty awesome. She's a digital media founder. She founded and served as CEO of Evil Beat Gossip, one of the earliest and most successful independent blogs of its time. And she grew to over 10 million monthly readers before she exited the business. Since then, she's been a marketing executive and leader at fast-scaling SaaS businesses, including Tableau, Integrate, and Splash, helping these companies navigate critical inflection points. And most recently, she was the CEO and co-founder of Elka AI, an innovative B2B MarTech technology company, which had a really interesting AI product that she's going to talk with us today about. And beyond her extensive operational and leadership experience, Sasha is also a thoughtful voice and mentor in the tech ecosystem. She's written for many outlets, including GeekWire. She's spoken at South by Southwest and TEDx, and she's an active mentor and advocate for rising leaders at places like General Assembly. I'm just really thrilled to have Sasha on the show today. So please join me in welcoming her. And Sasha, again, just thank you so much for joining us.
I'm so thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me, Nick. And you did your research. That was such a generous introduction. Thank you.
Of course. Well, I try my best. I won't lie. I have some of my own help with AI on the deep research, but I write the intros myself. So, um, um, but let's jump into it. I think first question for you today. Just tell us, with the most recent company, tell us about your aha moment, right? Like that moment where you just knew you had to go out and start this new venture.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a number of ways I could approach answering that question, right? But I think, as you mentioned, I'd been a serial entrepreneur, but I hadn't founded anything in quite some time. I just hadn't felt inspired to. I couldn't think of anything that I wanted to work on myself. People kept asking me, when are you going to found something again? And I just was like, what am I going to found? And if I had to put one aha moment on it, it was when ChatGPT released publicly, I think about 2.5 years ago. I think it was late 2022 was when ChatGPT released publicly. And that blew my mind. It just absolutely blew my mind in a way that technology or software at least hadn't resonated with me in a long time. And I thought to myself, okay, now we can start solving some problems that weren't solvable before. Because I come from the world of marketing. And in most cases, it's challenging to build technology that's fundamentally disruptive in marketing, because so much of what marketing is consuming and outputting human language. And that wasn't a strength for computers until very, very recently as these LLMs evolved. So as I was playing with ChatGPT in the early days, I got excited again, and I started to say to myself, "Oh my gosh, now we can solve some of these marketing problems that were not solvable with technology previously."
Yeah, amazing, amazing. And I think those problems that you're alluding to, I would assume those were problems that you had um, experienced quite a bit as a leader and as a marketing
Absolutely.
person throughout your career.
As a leader and as an individual contributor, I mean, I can give you kind of the little pitch for Elka and the problem we solved.
Yeah, sure.
Um,
Let's hear it.
so when I was at Tableau, this this is the first time I really deeply encountered this problem. When I was at Tableau, we would have these conferences around the world, and they would be like 3-day conferences with 5 different session tracks and hundreds of speakers. And we would pay to record a lot of those sessions, particularly the sessions with the customers. We do a bunch of on camera customer interviews. And we would have literally hundreds and hundreds of hours of footage from just one event, right? That we'd paid money, a lot of money to have the AV on this. And what ends up happening is marketing tries to go into that footage and edit something interesting. Maybe you'll put the whole sessions on YouTube, but nobody watches a 60-minute session anymore. So just a fraction of those hundreds of hours of video end up getting used by either marketing or sales. And meanwhile, particularly in Tableau had at its North American conference often 100 customer sessions over 3 days, right? Uh, and you know, I might get a call from one of our strategic sales guys, like a top sales guy saying, "Hey, Sasha, I'm trying to close an oil and gas deal, but I've got someone on the buying committee who does not think Tableau is going to be easy enough for his guys in the field to use. Do you have any customer evidence, someone in oil and gas talking about ease of use?" Right? And I'll think to myself, well, gosh, we had 2 customer speakers, um, last year from the oil and gas space. And so I'll grab a coordinator level hire and I'll tell her, go replay those sessions today. If they mention anything about usability, clip it and we'll send it over to John, you know? And for the senior guys and gals doing the multi-million dollar deals, I would pull someone out of her job for half a day and say, go listen to all the oil and gas sessions and grab anything about ease of use. Right. And that would help those guys and gals close those deals. But for the smaller deals or even the mid-sized deals, I wouldn't do that. I would say, search our website, see what we've got, but I'm not gonna take someone out of their job for half a day to solve this, to try to close a $10,000 deal, right? Um, but the content's probably there. The customer evidence the salesperson needs is probably there. They just can't find it and it hasn't been cut, nobody knows where it is. So what we did at Elka, and this is a problem, by the way, that tons and tons of B2B companies have and tons of revenue teams have, where they're just sitting on thousands and thousands of hours of this kind of owned footage that, could be used to close deals, could be used in a customer evidence capacity, and it just isn't because there's no good way to do it because it took so long for a human to go through and edit and tag all that content. Uh, so what Alka did is it allowed you to upload that footage. We would go through it. We would find the highlights. We would clip them. We would tag them 8 ways from Sunday, and we put them in a library for your sales team to search. So they could go in and, search by industry or search by keyword or search by person, and see what we had on that topic.
Amazing. I mean, I totally can see why AI could be such an unlock for a product like that, and as someone who spent a lot of time doing B2B startup video, the problems you were solving, you know, you're kind of talking a little bit about the product, and there's so much that I want to ask you, but maybe just talk to us a little bit about how you then like approached building the product, right? Like the alpha phase, the or the beta phase, like what did those programs look like, and kind of share with us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah. So I'll give a shout out to my technical co-founder, Jason Meltzer. He was fantastic, and couldn't have done it without his help. Um, so I don't want to take full credit for any of this, but I I will say, what we built in the time we had with the money we had, I'm so impressed with us. I'm really proud of it, and I'm really proud of the team. That we brought on initially 3 people. I think it's really important when you are building software for a sales and marketing audience that it has to look and feel good. It has to be built like a consumer product because a sales and marketing audience is different from like a dev audience. They want their software and they expect their software to look and feel effortless, to be super intuitive. And this was, not a super complex product at its start, but I wanted a library that felt really, really intuitive. I wanted search features that felt really, really intuitive. So, one of my first hires was UX. I thought it was really important to bring in UX and get it right the first time and not have to fix it later. So, was referred from someone in my network to a guy named John Billett, who did our UX and helped with the product. He was amazing. And then we also brought in, a back-end dev and a front-end dev, and we just we just started creating this thing. It took, probably 5 months, I think, to get to kind of an alpha, right? Where we had something up and running that actually kinda, sorta, maybe worked. Um, and then I think we probably moved to the beta phase a little too quickly, but we were also kind of up against clock in the sense that we were running out of money. So, we moved to beta. There were tons and tons of people who wanted to be in the beta. We had
Sorry, and just to
no
cut
pro
in, so
Yeah.
sorry to cut in and sorry to interrupt you. So with alpha, like, was that internal testing? Did you have like alpha partners at that phase as well? Or like, and then you were expanding, like, what was that dynamic like?
Alpha was internal testing and a handful of, like, friends,
Okay.
right? It was just, like, yeah, a handful of friends. It
Okay.
wasn't probably in retrospect, it wasn't as comprehensive as it needed to be before moving to beta. But again, also, you know, we were up against the clock, and I had hoped that having a beta with actual named enterprises
Yeah.
in the beta could help with fundraising. So, there was that pressure that, pushed me to open the beta sooner than the product was probably ready for it.
Those competing pressures are always difficult to navigate. You know, obviously there's a lot of AI companies today. You're really, I think, part of one of the first big waves of these companies. What what do you think was different in your alpha and beta journey as an AI company? Um, if anything, like were there unique considerations or factors at play for you, kind of building on this new technology?
Yeah, well, I think the operative word here is non-deterministic, right? It's very, very challenging to put an LLM wrapper kind of product into production, because and particularly, trying to do it, a year ago, right? Um, these products have gotten dramatically better even since we started, like, building this thing and opening it up. Uh, it I had gone in with premise that if this thing can work, 60% of the time, 70% of the time, that will be helpful enough that people will find value in it. And, we'll continue to improve, we'll continue to close that gap. But I had this kind of hypothesis that if it can do good work 70% of the time, that's going to be good enough for people to appreciate it. But for a number of reasons, users would run into issues. Some of those issues had nothing to do with the AI and were just issues we didn't catch in our own testing and could have been fixed with more time. But a lot of times they ran into issues with the AI, that the AI just didn't do what they needed. And because I think the beta, I didn't do, they hadn't paid to be in the beta. They had, uh, they were participating, but they hadn't paid for it. And so I think because they didn't have any skin in the game, when they would run into a couple of problems with the AI, they'd kind of just abandon ship, right? Just be like, this doesn't work. I'm not going to play with this anymore. And, uh, that was maybe a misstep on my part. I did personally onboard every beta customer. So I didn't just turn on like, hand over the keys. I made them get on a 45-minute onboarding call with me where I walked through everything and I trained them in everything because, I wanted them to be equipped to succeed. But you just don't know what the AI is gonna do, you know? And I think a lot of our beta customers got quickly frustrated when the first kind of thing went wrong and, didn't have any reason to stick it out.
Yeah, I mean, that's so hard because that's like to an extent, like the point of your beta program is to figure out what is going to work and what is not going to work. And so, I mean, you probably could have spent 2 years trying to get the AI to act in a really, really consistent way, but no founder has time for that.
And I actually think what would have been more effective, again, if we'd had the runway, was just waiting for the AI to get better, you know? It just keeps I mean, it's so much better today than it was when we launched our beta. And, we needed it to do certain things with math, right? Like, we needed it to uh, work with time codes and understand how to do a 30-second clip instead of a 5-minute clip, right? And we kept running into issues where it's just that thing just couldn't do math, right? Math was
Mhm.
hard for for the LLM. And I think even in the past year, uh, it's kind of data literacy has
Has
increased
increased
on
a
those
lot.
things. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so I mean, there's so much that I I wanna ask you about and talk about, but, we've kinda already started to get into your journey, but I think maybe just to rewind back a little, like, what were your, like, core motivators and drivers for this, right? Like, I think as having done it myself, right, like, founding entrepreneurship, it's kind of this crazy irrational act, at least in my opinion, like, wh why why go on this journey in the first place?
Well, probably for starters, because 'cause I'm a little bit crazy and irrational, right? Like, you gotta love the game. You've gotta just love the game, right? And um, you know, I would say I have all sorts of not all sorts of, but, like, I'm scared of heights. I won't go on roller coasters. Like, I have all sorts of fears in the physical world. But in the world of abstraction and kind of ideas and companies and that kind of thing and, just life pathways, I I don't think I have the same fear that I think you would agree. I think you'd see that across a lot of founders where I don't spend a lot of time worrying about, well, what if I fail, right? I just do the thing because it feels like that's what I'm supposed to do right now. And it does involve a lot of fearlessness, but I think a lot of us are wired in a way that It's scary maybe, but it's not terrifying. It's almost like you have to do it. And I'd built a successful company in my 20s and sold it. And then I'd spent most of my 30s working for other people for some really cool companies. I mean, I was lucky, but uh, I was tired of working for the people who could raise the money, but maybe weren't the most qualified to be running the company, right? And it wasn't everyone, and I'm not going to name names, but sometimes, not always, but sometimes the skill set of who can raise the money and who can run the company, they don't always overlap in a person. And some people are very, very good fundraisers who have no business actually leading a SaaS organization. Um, and I started thinking, gosh, like, I just wanna do it. I just wanna do it. Why can't it be me? Why can't I just do it myself? And I found out why, because I can't raise the money. Because I 100% have the skill set to build the business. I feel like we did a phenomenal job where we got to. I'm super impressed with our team and with what I was able to achieve, what my co-founder was able to achieve. Uh, but ultimately, we couldn't get to revenue and we needed more funding. We needed not a ton, but we needed more funding and I couldn't get it. I didn't have that skill set overlap.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's just that set of points is fascinating to me. The difference between the, let's say, the builder and then the person that can go ahead and sell, and what skill set is like more important and better. And especially in today, so much we speak so much about real leadership, authentic leadership, leading with your heart, all of those things. And at least from my personal experience, I felt very comfortable like in that mode. And then where I didn't have necessarily, well, I mean, eventually I had problems like raising more capital, but like we also didn't have the metrics to back it. Um, but where I struggled in the fundraising like part of the game was just in like almost like the pure selling, like just like the crazy Adam Newman style selling that like, let's say, throws caution to the wind. And I don't think every founder or CEO is always there, but there's like some elements of that that's valuable and it can be hard to navigate probably one way or the other. Like if you're really good at one, you probably struggle more with the other, and vice versa.
I completely agree. And I think there's even, yeah, I think some amount of not not tethering yourself too closely to the whole truth can be valuable in that process. And what I have found about myself is I tether myself to the whole truth, and I really struggle to tell a story that's maybe bigger than the reality today, or yeah, to kind of answer anything in a way that isn't authentic. Um, and I think if you want to fundraise, it's almost just part of that game. You've gotta the VCs expect they expect you to lie. I mean, they expect you to lie a little bit. They really do. And if you don't know how to play that game or you're not willing to play that game where it's like, they lied too, right? Everyone's just lying to each other, and at some point, $50 million gets exchanged. I don't know how it happened, but, it's not through, like, sheer authenticity.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like it's a tough game, and it's as much I think as art as it is a science, right? Because it's like a pure bold faced lie will come back to bite you for sure. But there's like some level, I think, to quote you, like of fibbing, right? That's probably, I mean, it is just incorporated into the cost of doing business. And so, and how do you find that? How do you find that right balance? You said something earlier about kind of timing, and it's the timing of this technology, and obviously it's rapidly changing, and how to an extent there was a driver there, in what
Yeah.
happened. Like, to an extent, you're kind of talking about, like, the element of luck, like timing and luck, right? Like, how do
Yeah.
you think about how do you think about the role of timing and luck and all of this versus agency and, like, our own role as founders and CEOs in our own journey?
Yeah. I mean, they say you make your own luck, but there's also just luck. I've had a lot of luck in my life. I've had so much luck in my life. I think Jason and I, my co-founder and I, we wanted to be early in this space. We intentionally wanted to be early in this space. We wanted to have something in place so that as the underlying technology evolved, we could evolve with it and we could kind of just be on that wave and ride the wave of the underlying technology improving and becoming cheaper and all of that. I mean, that was an intentional decision that we made. It's possible we were a little too early. Uh, Again, I think if there had been a way to extend runway, for another year, we would have been in a very different situation. I mean, part of our plan was contingent on, being able to raise a little more money. But I don't think, and you know what? I don't want to say like we were unlucky because we were able to raise the initial angel round that got us to a beta, right? And I'm so grateful and so lucky that people bet on us in the angel round. That was luck to some extent that we got that money. Um, but then we just didn't quite get the luck to get the rest of it. And
Yeah.
we didn't and the underlying technology wasn't quite where we needed it to be yet.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely both. There's a
Yeah,
role of both agency and luck.
yeah,
I don't know what part is what, but there's it plays a part in all of our journeys and all of our stories.
yeah.
Um, when you think about your journey, from beginning to end, are there any key forks in the road or pathways you took that you think a lot about um, that you think took the business in one direction versus the other?
I think we made some really good hires. Uh, if anyone is looking for contract help on any of your projects, ping me, I'll give you some names. I think we did a really, really good job of hiring, and that was a game changer in a positive way. Having A players on your team changes everything. I think I had a really good co-founder, in Jason, and that is a huge plus. We the people who bet on us early on, who were willing to give us money based on an idea and who we were, that was I mean, that the hugest fork was when we were able to raise our angel round, and it was like, "Oh my gosh, we have money now. We can actually." We'd been dreaming about it, and we'd been kind of thinking about how we'd architect it, and we had a little bit of the software built out, but this allowed us to really kind of finish that job and get that beta out. So that was a huge fork in the road. Jason and I decided we weren't going to relocate to San Francisco or anything like that, even though a number of people recommended it. I think, I don't wish I lived in San Francisco now. I think we both live in Phoenix, and I think that was the right choice for us. But it did really, I think being in a city like San Francisco or LA or New York or Seattle is really helpful for fundraising compared to being in Phoenix. Phoenix is a tough city to fundraise from. So that was definitely a decision we made that I think had an impact. Um, And then there were just lots of people who gave me lots of little pieces of advice, right? That really helped me move the needle or move forward. But I would say generally, from start to finish, I was still executing on the vision I'd started with. Like we built the V1 that I had initially conceived. Like we didn't pivot in those we didn't pivot much, yeah.
I mean, it sounds like you had issues with kind of design partners, beta partners, like ghosting you. I struggled with the same thing, and managing that dynamic is really difficult. Um, but it sounds like that was more around like kind of bugs and the underlying like quality of the AI technology, not necessarily like the promise of what you were trying to build, or the core problem.
I I I think we went to beta with too many bugs, and we didn't do a thorough enough alpha, and I think, there were the issues with the non-determinism of the AI, there were the issues with the kind of data literacy of the AI, the the its ability to just, like, do math, but, no, there were also just bugs. There were bugs that had nothing to do with AI that we just hadn't caught in our testing, uh and those were frustrating too. I think, I'm not saying like everything would have been perfect if it hadn't been for the AI. We definitely had more bugs than I would have liked in a beta that could
Yeah.
have been resolved had we caught them. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was the same way. I was always so annoyed every time a customer would find a bug, and then my co-founder, Chris, would be like, "Nick, this is, like, part of the process." So, I
Yeah.
in
But I'm a
retrospect, I
perfectionist. I'm
No,
sure
of
you are
course.
too.
Of course, of course. I mean, I just I think that's a really, really tough one. I think your experiences with the non-determinism of an AI product is unique and is different, and it's something that I think more and more founders are going to have to, try to navigate.
Yeah. And we tried so hard, by the way. We built in all sorts we tried so hard to solve for it, like, we had all these sanity checks, right? Like, we take the output out of the LLM, and we had all these ways to, like, sanity check it and send it back if it didn't pass the sanity checks, and, I mean, we tried so many different ways of making this thing just a little more deterministic. We didn't land on the perfect answer, and I don't know that anyone has yet.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that one. You've spoken about it a little, your co-founder, your team, other folks, like, there's a lot that goes into this journey, so many ups and downs. Who are the folks maybe that you haven't mentioned yet that were part of your support system, or talk about your support system as a founder, CEO, and the role they played in your journey?
Yeah. Well, so, yeah, definitely shout out to my co-founder, shout out to my team, they were fantastic. Uh, I think the again, like, the first people that were really game changing were the angel investors who bet on us early, not just because they gave us money, but because they gave us confidence, they gave us that morale boost that they would bet on us. So those were huge people, but, it was surprising kind of who really showed up, you know? I've talked to some old bosses, some who had founded companies who really made the time to advise me and to guide me through fundraising and to guide me through building the product. There was a guy I'd worked with uh, at my job before I started this company. He was head of legal, and he started his own company, a software company, at the same time I was starting Elka. And so we were facing a lot of the same problems at the same time. But he understood so much more about the legal and financial side of it than I did. And he would get on a call with me like every 2 weeks and, you know, just walk me through basics of how do I even do this? Like, I didn't understand that you could just do a safe in Carta, right? That I could basically just configure Carta, press a few buttons, and issue a safe and have money in my bank account, right? I just had no idea how to do any of that, like the logistics of raising an angel round. And he helped me a lot with that. Another former coworker was uh, a fractional CFO for us, and he didn't charge us anything. He took a portion of equity, but he worked really hard helping us do projections and modeling and that sort of thing. And it was just interesting. And then, of course, again, without naming names, there are people that you think are going to show up for you who don't, right? That kind of surprises you and hurts you. And then there are these people that you wouldn't expect to show up for you who show up for you in really huge ways. And it's an interesting learning experience.
Totally. I mean, I think, you know, I'm not gonna get this right, but there's like this adage that you really know who your friends are when things get bad or things get tough. And sometimes there's just like the crazy startup story where everything just goes right, but those are definitely the exceptions. And so you just see that as a founder in your journey. Um, and no matter what your outcome is, like there's gonna be a lot of really tough moments, and the people that show up for you in those moments, it speaks a lot about who they are and your relationship to them. You were talking about some of the the learnings, like the column, like the non-sexy founder work, the back office stuff, like issuing safes and Carta. You know, when I like read through, I like look at your background, like you are so accomplished. You are a previous founder. You're not a 18-year-old who's never had a job. You are far from that. What were like some of the big like growth moments or growth areas, learning areas for you on your journey?
Yeah. So definitely. And I have an MBA and I learned a lot in my MBA program. I think that was it was very helpful to have gone through that program, but uh, an MBA doesn't really prepare you for the day to day of kind of the operational stuff of running a business. And I had never done fundraising before. My last company I had bootstrapped. This is my first time on that journey, and yeah, there was just so much to learn there, and I learned a lot, not just the operational and logistic stuff, but also about myself personally, like where I have strengths and where I have weaknesses, and where I have fears and where I have insecurities, and where, uh, you know, um, I just I just really struggled with that part of it. That was a huge learning experience for me. Again, not just ramping up on all the logistic stuff, but everything I learned learned about myself. If I had to Jason and I both agreed, like, if we do this again, we're bringing on a third co-founder, and they're gonna be a salesperson. They're gonna be in charge of fundraising. Like, we're done with this. We don't wanna do
Done with
fundraising
the
again.
fundraising piece.
We're done with this. It is not my zone of genius.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe just we talk us like can you talk us through a little bit what the dynamics of fundraising there at the end for you? Like what kind of what happened and what was that experience like? You said you're out in the future, so I'm just I would love to hear more about kind of those exact dynamics and what you heard and maybe what you learned.
So I think part of it is that you have to be really persistent, and you have to be really good at asking, and you have to be really good at maybe creating fake scarcity, right? Like a lot of the advice I got was tell people you're closing the round in 3 weeks and you're oversubscribed and this is their last chance to get in. And it wasn't true, right? And people would be like, no, tell them that anyway. Just pick a date and tell people that you're oversubscribed and you're closing the round on that date and this is their last chance to get in. But I could not do that. I could not do that, and people a number of people gave me advice like that and acted like, "Well, obviously that's what you do." And I was just like, "How? How?" Um, and then also, um yeah, I mean, I talked to so many VCs, and there's a lot of different types of VCs out there. Uh, they are, I think, probably all really smart people. I don't think all of them. So there are some VCs I talked to where I was like, "Whoa, you are so smart and you get this and you're asking really tough but fair questions and you're bringing up a lot of valid points and blah blah blah." And then there were other VCs that would grill me and I'd be like, "You're an idiot." I'm not going to name names, but like they would ask the dumbest questions where you're like, "Oh, why are you even asking that? How can you not figure out the answer to that question?" Like, they just I don't know. They just wanted to hear themselves talk. And then the other game that they'll play and again, not all of them. So some of them, some VC firms, they'd hear my pitch and they'd write back within, a couple of days and be like, "We're not gonna move forward with you. Here's why." And that's great. Those people are great, right? And then there are other VC firms that, like, they just wanna drag you along. Think they want the right to say no, right? Like, they don't wanna quite let you get away, but they're not willing to make a decision, so they make it seem like they're gonna invest in you, and they just need more information and more paperwork and another interview and another demo and, whatever. And I've realized that that's a bad sign. Like, people who are actually gonna give you money are gonna do it fairly quickly. They're gonna get it, they're gonna wanna bet on you, and they're gonna do it fairly quickly, and when you're that early, uh, when you're, looking for a pre-seed or a seed fund, if someone's dragging you on for months, they're not gonna fund you. Like, walk away.
So this might put you on the spot a little, so I apologize. But, there's so much data, conversations out there just about, like, how it is a more difficult fundraising environment and process for women than it is for men. Do you feel like that's true? If so, or in general, do you have advice for other women founders, just based off of your experience?
Yeah. I do feel that there's some truth to it. I never felt, like, actively discriminated against. No one did anything creepy or rude, nothing like that. I don't feel like I was treated poorly in any way. But you just have to wonder if I were a 28-year-old white guy coming in pitching the same idea, might they, uh, respond differently? Might they ask different questions? And in fact, there's a lot of research that investors tend to ask women a lot of, like, failure-based questions, like, "Well, what about this problem? And what about this problem? And what about this problem?" Whereas they tend to ask men more, uh, like, open-ended visionary questions,
Mhm.
like, "How big do you think this market could be? And what is the potential here?" And, there's a whole research paper on that, and, I do think there's some truth to that where there's just a almost like a ingrained presumption of competence that men get that women don't.
Yeah.
Uh, eh, because it's just like, yeah, yeah. I'm like, I'm obviously qualified to do this. Like, I know the guys you people give money to. Like, I am as qualified as them, but um, I never want to blame that. I don't think any woman founder wants to, point the finger at I just couldn't raise money because I'm a woman. And then I think the other thing that's really important to note about being a woman versus being a man, and this is also very true of people of color too. is so much of this game is your network. So much of this game is your network. And I had a number of people who I went to for advice who would say things like, "Oh, you need a $500,000? All that you just gotta find 5 friends who will write you a $100,000 check," right? And I don't I have tons of female friends who could write me a $100,000 check, who have that kind of money in their household, right? But that's not what women do. It's just not what they do, right? Whereas like, men are more inclined to make those transactions when their buddy calls them up and says, "Hey, I'm starting this big tech company. It's going to be huge. You want to put in 100 grand?" I think men feel much more empowered and comfortable saying, "Yeah, buddy, I'll give you that money." Assuming it's comfortable for them financially, right? My girlfriends were kind of like, "What are you talking about?" And some of them would say things like, "I don't think my husband would go for that," um, and I just think like I couldn't believe how many people gave me this advice. Like, well, you just need to find 5 people to give you $100,000. Just call your friends. And I'm like, what are you
Yeah, easier
talking
said than
about?
done. Easier said than
Like,
done. Just calling
and
your
they would say it like it's a no duh. And, I'm like, what world do you live in? But I do think certain people live in networks that where you can realistically do something like that. Uh, it was always white men giving me that advice. Never did a woman or person of color give me that advice. But, uh, yeah, so much of it is your network, and I had an amazing network in so many ways that was so supportive of me, which was a huge advantage, but I think other people have better networks, and I think men tend to exist in networks, uh, that are more likely to hand each other money.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's so much that goes into it and so much that has to, let's say, just to break your way in order for it to all come together and all work. And to your point, you probably had a pretty amazing network that came out in lots of ways. For example, like around your beta, right? But it kind of only takes one chink in the armor. Um, but at least around the fundraising process, what you said was fascinating, just around the types of questions being more like around failure versus around vision. Um, so at least as a woman founder to be prepared for that, right? To know that you're gonna have to overcome that objection or those sets of objections and being ready.
Yeah. Yeah, I did a lot of objection handling work, but I think I did it well. I felt like I was prepared for most of the questions they threw at me, even the ones that I hadn't prepared for, stuff that came out of left field that, again, sometimes it was really thoughtful where I was like, "Oh, that's a really good point. I hadn't thought of that." And then sometimes they'd throw out objections that I was like, "Oh, why would you even ask that? Like, that's the dumbest question I've ever heard. Like, how did you get this job?" But, uh, yeah, I was really prepared for it.
So we before we for wrapping, like I would love to just hear more, just hear more about you on a personal level. You know, tell us a little bit more about yourself, um, who you are up to becoming a founder, who you are outside of being a founder, how your work identity might inform your perspective on life. Just yeah, tell us more. Tell
Yeah.
us more about yourself.
I'm an Arizona gal, born and raised. I've lived all over the world, but I came back to Phoenix. This is home, and I love it here. Um, I, let's see, this feels like when someone's like, "What are your hobbies?" I'm like, "I don't really have hobbies," but I will put in a plug here, for I have a bad cooking show on TikTok, and so
Interesting.
I am a yeah. So I am a terrible cook. I am like the world's worst cook, and I nothing I do can make me a better cook. So it I decided I would start, like, filming me trying to cook things, um, what with some commentary, and I started putting those videos on TikTok, and they've started to build a following, so it's just Sasha is cooking, one word on TikTok. I highly recommend people go check those out because, uh, that's my side hustle now, bad cooking videos.
I love it.
But no, I think I'm someone who tries to be really, like you said, authentic in everything I do, show up in my relationships 100%, be truthful, be compassionate, be of service, um, and be kind. And, uh, you know, I think I think there are people who balance that skill set really well with just the right amount of kind of like ruthlessness and like killer instinct. And I don't think I have the ruthlessness and killer instinct, right? I don't. And I can make hard decisions, but I think that's a little bit different from killer instinct. And I don't know that you need that to, you know, build a successful company. I think you do need a little bit of it to fundraise.
Yeah. You've run and founded 2 companies now. I mean, did you always know that you wanted to be a founder, that you wanted to run your own business, when you were younger? Or, how did that come about?
I didn't know that until I kind of ended up doing it the first time. I and people would tell me growing up, like, you're gonna be a business builder one day, like, you're gonna be a founder, you're gonna be a CEO." And I was not interested in it at all, but I was always a leader growing up, right? I was always, you know, even if I was, like, the the on the playground and we were creating a dance or a play or something, right? Like, I was always the person directing everything. I was always the one in charge. I'm the oldest sister, Um, and I think once I did it, I realized that I was really comfortable in leadership and that, um, I didn't think I'll tell you this, I didn't think I ever wanted to manage people. I really didn't. I thought I wanted to be an individual contributor my whole career. I thought it's so much faster to do it myself. If I do it myself, I'll do it right. I had no interest in building a team and managing a team, which those people make the best managers, honestly, the people who never wanted to be managers. But when when against my will, an employee got put under me in a job,
Mhm.
who was a gr she was great. She was great. Uh, I And I started to realize that, oh, like if you train the team well and you manage them well, you can actually produce so much more by managing a team well than you can yourself, regardless of how productive you are. And that was such an aha moment in my life where I was like, I need to get better at management because this is how you create something. It is through the skill set of leading a team, not through working harder, like yourself.
100%. Yeah, I mean, that dynamic is also really hard. That's a hard founder dynamic too, because as a founder, you generally can do things faster yourself than, like, coaching somebody, but then being in the machine is not the best way to build the machine, and sometimes you have to do both, um, but when you decide to be in the machine and when you decide to build the machine, that's always I think, a difficult decision, to make as a founder, um, and a lot of that is also just, like, personal, like, what do you enjoy more?
Yeah. Yeah. I I found I mean, there were certain things I liked doing myself. was really looking forward to the day where I could hire someone to handle all the operational stuff that, the behind the scenes kind of, managing bank accounts and, taxes and all that kind of stuff. I didn't like that stuff, but, I really enjoyed working on the product, collaborating with the team on the product. Um, but I was also really lucky. Again, so much of it comes down to hiring, and I think over the course of my career, I've been good at hiring, and that's been one of my strengths as a leader is I'm good at hiring, I'm good at coaching, I'm good at using people to their highest and best use. And I'm good at trusting people, right? I'm good at I mean, either I'm gonna trust you or I'm gonna fire you. There's no two ways about it. Like either I trust you to get the job done well or I'm going to fire you. Um, but luckily I really trusted this team to get the job done well and they did. They did. Given the time and the resources, they got the job done extremely fast and extremely well.
So, last question before I let you go, and you've been very generous with your time today. So, again, thank you. Um, what's one piece of advice you would give to your future self, if and when you'd decide to start something again?
I mean, like I mentioned, the biggest thing is I would want to involve a co-founder that could help with fundraising and with the sales side of it. I realize that that's really a strength that I need um, some help with. Um, and yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is just recognizing that that was not a strength for me and that I should have involved someone earlier on that could have been a part of the business and also helped with that. Um, yeah, I think that's about it.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think, you know, obviously that lesson is specific to you, but the general lesson of knowing thyself, knowing yourself, and through the journey, learning about yourself is something that every founder can take away. And I think just, if nothing else, that lesson is such a valuable one.
So I did have one more note on what I wanted to talk about in terms of advice to myself. So I studied, I majored in computer science in college. And as a freshman, first of all, I was one of very few women, and it was so intimidating. There were so many guys in these, CS 100 classes who used these fancy words, and I didn't know what the words meant. And um, I was so intimidated, and I thought to myself, wow, like they're already so far ahead of me. I'm never gonna catch up. Um, I can't do this. Uh, I I should just quit, right? And then a funny thing happened, which was by junior year, they'd all switched their majors, those guys. They dropped out of computer science. They couldn't they had all the buzzwords, but they couldn't hack the actual coursework, right? They were all out of engineering by junior year, those kind of pompous guys with the fancy words. Um, and I realized reflecting back on it. By the way, I graduated with honors. I graduated cum laude, computer science degree. I had almost a 4.0 in my major. I did fine. I did fine. Um, and I think looking back, what I would tell myself is this was the same thing. This was the same thing. Fundraising was the same thing where there's a lot of guys, they have a lot of fancy words. They may be in positions of power right now, but they're not necessarily smarter than you. They're not better than you. And don't don't waste so much energy being intimidated by these people and having all this fear around this process because, uh, you know, looking back on it, I'm like, it's yeah, it's the same thing. I'm as good as any of them. I just didn't know the language.
Truly. Well, thank you so much for just being brutally honest with us today about everything, not just that last point, and again for taking the time to share your story.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Of course, of course. Well, I think that's it. If you're listening, thanks so much for tuning in, and this has been another episode of the Not Another CEO podcast. Thank you.
That's a wrap for this week's episode of Not Another CEO podcast. Thanks for joining. For show notes and more, please visit notanotherceopodcast.com. We'll see you next week.